explore a little bit about the role of corporate profiteering and its contributions to inflation, as we've kind of been discussing today, particularly in two areas, rent and groceries. Now, in terms of housing, big corporations are exacerbating what is already a major housing supply crisis in the United States. We have these major, often private equity-backed companies that are gobbling up homes in our housing market, which is already creating excess scarcity on top of the housing scarcity that already exists. And then by constricting that supply, we're also seeing a lot of these major, huge multi-billion-dollar companies then either flip those properties and just resell them at a higher rate due to that artificially inflated price, or they hold on and hoard this housing stock and rent out at exorbitant prices. Dr. Zandi, isn't it the case that the average American now has to compete with major companies like Invitation Homes, whose parent company is Blackstone, which is the largest private equity company in the world, when they're in the market for a home?
Yeah, I think obviously the institutional investors and mom and pop investors are a much larger, as I mentioned earlier, they're 1/4 of all home sales at the end of last year. So they are big players, and that's nationwide. So in some markets, if you go to an Atlanta or a Phoenix, or Boise, they're much higher than 1/3 to 40% of the market. So yeah, they're playing a very large role. They don't affect the amount of housing stock, right? I mean, the home is still there. It's changing. We're going from single-family home ownership, though, to rental. So it's making it more difficult.
And available housing stock for purchase, I should clarify.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's definitely having an impact there. And that's why it's very critical, in my view, for lawmakers to really focus on the kinds of things to increase the supply that this becomes less of an issue.
Thank you, Dr. Zandi. And it does seem as though, and so to clarify, the image that we have here is that you have a young couple, they tried to do the right thing. They were told that if you go to college, you'll get a good job. They graduate with hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars in student debt, but they work through it. Perhaps they have a young kid. They want to get a 2-3 bedroom home. And they're competing against the largest private equity firm in the world to purchase a home. In fact, companies like Blackstone, Zillow, and Bedrock are buying up to 15% of available homes. But what I find interesting here is that they're purchasing them in minority and low-income neighborhoods specifically, particularly in metro areas like New York, Atlanta, and Detroit. About 1 in every 7 homes in the United States is being bought by a corporation at an inflated price. Dr. Drummer, did you know, we're seeing here that even in communities like mine in Queens, renters are now facing drastic rent hikes as large as 30 to 50% up from what they were paying last year. Can you expand a little bit on how this concentration of corporate power and the skyrocketing costs of housing are being disproportionately felt in low-income, working-class, Black, and Latino neighborhoods?
Thank you, Representative, for the great question. This is the market that we have created for housing in America. Right now, 6 million renter households are currently behind on rent. Again, as stated previously, that is double the pre-pandemic baseline. And 2/3 of these people are people of color. In 2021 alone, rents increased by at least 10% in 149 metropolitan areas. And what we're seeing around the country is a failure of policy and law to address the acute shortage of housing. If someone wants to make the case that this is just how markets are supposed to work, they can. My view is that our current housing crisis constitutes a serious, significant series of market failures that require robust policy response at the federal, state, and local level.
Thank you, Dr. Drummer. I have one more question as well. I want to explore a policy possibility with you. There are a lot of ideas that are explored. The United States has very different housing policies than other countries and areas. What do you make of the idea of a public institution that purchased distressed real estate and financed its transfer to the social housing sector, such as cooperatives, community land trusts,
the gentlewoman's time has expired.
Yes, the Build Back Better bill actually has.
If the
Am I out of
gentleman
order?
woman's time has expired, if you'll just submit your answer, sir, for the record, that would be great.